Now we are in the full digital portion of the video lessons. We will be learning how to calculate the click-through rate, conversion rate, and ROI for a digital campaign. The ROI applies to any campaign, online or offline, so understanding the concept and the formula should be able to assist you in applying this analysis to any campaign. After you finish this video lesson, you will be able to understand media terminology associated with digital campaigns, understand the concept of calculating the return on investment or ROI of a campaign or an advertising investment, understand how to calculate and recognize a click-through rate, understand how to calculate and recognize a conversion rate, understand how to calculate return on investment or ROI, and assess the success or failure of a campaign to deliver on key performance indicators or KPIs. So let's start with the basic terminology that you need to understand. Digital or online marketing or campaigns is marketing that uses technology platforms such as websites, email, mobile, and social networks to advertise a product or a service or a cause. Click-through rate measures the effectiveness of a digital ad and campaign, regardless of the ad format. It is calculated dividing the clicks generated by the gross or total impressions and multiplied times 100. It is how many people clicked on the digital ad divided by how many people saw or how many impressions were delivered times 100, because it is presented as a percentage. Conversion rate is a deeper metric to measure engagement and is calculated by simply taking the total desired outcomes. It can be leads, sales, and that is divided by the total number of visitors that can be tracked to this outcome during the same time period, multiplied times 100. It's another percentage. Lead is defined as the identification of a person or entity who has interest to purchase a product or service and represents the first stage of the sales process. Sales is an actual conversion of a lead interested in the product or service measured by conversion from interest into an outcome of actual purchase or sales. The purchase funnel is a graphic representation that analyzes a consumer journey from exposure to the advertising message to ultimately becoming a loyal customer. The classic purchase funnel is typically broken into 5 stages: awareness, interest, consideration, preference, and purchase. And understanding that this is not a static process. From a measurement point of view, this consumer journey is less linear, and the exposure to the advertising message from several media repeated number of times, remember reach and frequency, may represent a more complex picture that may not be necessarily follow the 5 stages in such a clinical way. A consumer may not necessarily and immediately go buy the product after seeing the advertising. Today's informed consumer may take several exposures through a variety of platforms from lead to conversion. Average order value, another term, analyzes sales for a particular product or website, assuming they have different prices, and the average cost for similar items sold. Gross profit is the profit a company makes after deducting the costs associated with making and selling the products, or costs associated with providing the services. Gross profit will appear on a company's income statement and can be calculated by subtracting the cost of goods sold from the revenue or sales. The difference between gross and net profit is when you subtract expenses. Gross profits is a business revenue minus the cost of the goods sold, while net profit is the business revenue after subtracting operating expenses, interest, and taxes, including marketing and advertising from the gross profit. A KPI or key performance indicator are metrics established as goals and compared against results, which gauge the effectiveness of an online or offline campaign and tracks how a company is achieving key business objectives. A typical campaign has several KPIs, which are all the metrics you have studied, from ratings and impressions, reach and frequency, coverage, composition, CPM and CPP, to digital versions of metrics such as impressions delivered, which is like traditional media, click-through rate, conversion rates, traffic, etc. When measuring the success or limitations of digital or online campaigns, and offline for that matter, we have been studying the concept of KPIs, or key performance indicators. This is an important buzzword to mean specific goals to measure the effectiveness and success of a campaign or any effort. In every line of business, there's some kind of metric used to gauge how they're performing and judge success or failure. For example, in the retail industry, for instance, same-store sales is an example of a KPI. In the auto industry, it is car total sales or specific dealership sales, for example. In online advertising, KPIs include again click-through rate, conversion rate, and others. A typical online campaign may have about, give and take, 5 KPIs, more or less. One thing to keep in mind is to limit the KPIs to those that make the most sense in an effort to make an intelligent analysis. We're going to learn about click-through rate, or CTR, to understand the extent of an online ad engagement. With the argument we have followed throughout the course of potential exposure versus actual exposure, you can see an online ad with impressions delivered and not necessarily click on it. Or you can click on it and still not buy. Also, KPIs vary depending on what stage of the purchase funnel your target consumer is at. For example, in the early stages of marketing a brand, the goal may be to raise awareness. But further along the maturity of the brand, engagement may be more important. Did the customer watch the online video? Did the audience interact with your ad in some way? To measure an online or digital campaign, it is important to define what success looks like in the form of a KPI. For example, are you talking about customer acquisition, customer retention, offline sales, etc.? The KPIs you're about to learn are several and basic ones. You will learn again how to calculate the click-through rate, establish a conversion rate, and understand if the investment was worth it. In other words, did the campaign recuperate the advertising investment and make money, which is the best case scenario. This calculation can tie back to a calculation discussed in another video, the payout point. Payout point, just to refresh your memory, is the volume of product sales needed for the advertising. In other words, how much more do I need to sell to recuperate the budget spent in advertising? The payout point can be another KPI because it ties back to the amount needed to be sold above and beyond to at least break even. Okay, so let's get started. Remember that you can refer to the PowerPoint lesson. We will take each calculation in steps. So let's first understand the scenario and the numbers. In this case, let's talk about an online retailer, e-commerce, that sells designer handbags, and they ran a digital campaign. In the past 30 days, they spent $15,000 on keywords or AdWords, and during the campaign, 100,000 impressions were delivered to people searching for those specific keywords. They received, the retailer, 7,500 clicks on their link, and people searched for handbags meaning their company appeared in the search results, and 7,500 actually clicked on their link. Those visitors resulted in 225 orders, averaging $400 with a gross profit margin of 30%. To assess the success of this campaign and based on these results, we need to ask the following questions. Are they making money? What is the CTR of the campaign? What is the conversion rate of the campaign? And we're going to calculate the ROI or profit for this effort. So let's first organize the data. Let's go back and organize. The advertising investment for these 30 days were $15,000 on AdWords or keywords. How many people were reached? 100,000 impressions were served. How many visitors per month did they have? What was the response? 7,500 clicks. What were the total sales for that month as a result of this effort? 225 orders. What was the average order value? $400. What is the gross profit margin? 30%, meaning how much is their profit after manufacturing costs. So now let's again take it in steps and let's calculate click-through rate. So for the calculating formula is total clicks divided by gross impressions and multiplied times 100. Remember, this is a percentage. So in order to calculate click-through rate, we take the 7,500 clicks divided by the 100,000 impressions times 100, and you get 7.5%. So the click-through rate is 7.5%, meaning that out of all the impressions served, 7.5% of these 100,000 impressions clicked on the advertiser's link. So now let's calculate conversion rate. So remember, for the conversion rate, you need to define what that conversion is. So the formula in this case are orders or sales divided by the total clicks. Now you are those people that actually clicked on the link, how many of them basically responded to what you defined conversion was. In this case, it's the ultimate conversion, which is sales. So in this case, 225 orders resulted out of the 7,500 people that went to the website and clicked on the link times 100. Remember, this is another percentage. So that results to 3%. So that what this means is that 3% of everyone that clicked on the advertiser's link actually bought something. Of 225 items were sold. So now let's calculate gross profit. So for the gross profit, remember that we had 225 orders, and obviously the client has to give you some information because if you're the agency or the marketer, the marketing agency, you do not know certain information about the client. So it resulted in 225 orders, and the average order was $400 according to their statistics. So 225 orders at an average of $400 per order. So you multiply these results in $90,000 gross. So this is the amount of money they made without taking away any operational cost. So now the next step is to calculate net profit. So for net profits, the formula is gross revenue multiplied by the percentage of gross profit margin divided, meaning by 100, equals net revenue. Because we know, and again, this is information you need to know from the actual retailer or client, we know that gross profit margin is 30%, or 30% gross profit is the actual money they're going to make. So again, the gross profit was $90,000. And you multiply that times 0.30, which is 30% gross profit margin divided by 100, and that equals $27,000. So now we know click-through rate, conversion rate, gross profit, and net profit. So the final one, change colors, the final one is now, are they making money? Let's calculate ROI, or return on investment. To calculate ROI, the formula is net revenue minus the advertising investment, and then divided again by the advertising investment times 100, because again, this is perceived, even though you don't put the percentage, this is perceived as a percentage. So net profit is, again, ROI is your net profit, which was $27,000. Remember that your advertising investment was $15,000, equals $12,000. This is, by the way, this is not rocket science. It's just understanding what you're doing. So it's $12,000. And then $12,000 divided by, again, the advertising investment of $15,000 times 100 equals, let me put it here so that it's clear, 80%. So now, let's go and report these results. By the way, this is the slide for calculating return on investment. So now let's calculate reporting the results. The campaign statistics and results are as follow. The advertising investment was $15,000 on keywords or AdWords. The impressions delivered were 100,000 impressions. The response was 7,500 clicks. Sales, that resulted in 225 orders. The average order value is $400. The gross profit margin is 30%. So let's go through the campaign analytics. Click-through rate was 7.5%, meaning that 7.5% that saw the link clicked on it. The conversion rate was 3%, meaning 3% of people that clicked on the link bought an item, ultimate conversion. Gross revenue was $90,000. Net revenue was $27,000. And the return on investment is 80%, or 80. For every dollar spent, 80 cents were returned in profit. By running this campaign, the question remains, did the advertiser make money? Yes, because it was a positive plus 80 ROI. Now keep studying and practicing, and I will see you in the next video lesson.